Have you ever wondered how the United States reshaped the world without firing a single shot? How a simple piece of paper printed with green ink grew more powerful than armies, fleets, or empires? This is not a story about soldiers or tanks. It is a story about money. About how America turned the dollar into a weapon so effective that it replaced conquest itself. And the most remarkable part is that it happened quietly. Through contracts, credit, and promises written in ink instead of blood. Today the world bows to the dollar, yet very few remember the silent conflict that made it supreme. Have you ever asked yourself what ruled the world before American money did? The answer was gold and the British pound. For more than a century before the First World War, London stood at the center of global finance. Ships moved goods across oceans, and nearly every transaction from India to Argentina settled in pounds convertible into gold. It was a system built on restraint. You could not simply create more gold. Empires survived or collapsed based on their reserves. But by the early 1900s, that restraint became a trap. European powers were arming for conflict, expanding colonies, and piling up costs their treasuries could no longer sustain. Then, in 1914, the Old World ignited. The First World War consumed men and money at a pace history had never seen. Gold drained from vaults. Governments suspended convertibility. Britain, France, Germany, all abandoned the standard that had kept their currencies disciplined. In that moment, the center of finance began to drift westward. Across the Atlantic, the United States was watching and calculating. America was officially neutral, yet it became the supplier and banker of the Allied powers. Factories in Detroit, Pittsburgh, and New York ran day and night shipping weapons, food, and fuel overseas, and every shipment was paid for in dollars. Soon Europe was buried under debt owed to American banks. By 1917, J.P. Morgan alone had arranged billions of dollars in loans for Britain and France, an unimaginable sum at the time. Have you ever wondered how a nation grows wealthy from another nation's war? America did not conquer land, it conquered credit. While Europe bled, the United States accumulated gold and constructed the foundations of global finance. When the war ended, the world owed America money and trust. By 1919, the United States held more than half of the world's gold reserves. The balance of power had shifted permanently. After the war, Europe lay broken. Factories were ruins, governments were bankrupt, and populations were starving. The United States stood as the only major power, still solvent, stable, and expanding. When nations needed to rebuild, they needed credit, and that credit came from one place, Wall Street. Throughout the 1920s, American loans flowed overseas like a river of relief. Germany borrowed dollars to meet reparations. Britain borrowed dollars to restore industry. France borrowed dollars to stabilize its currency. The dollar became the world's lifeline. Then came the Great Depression, and with it a global collapse of confidence. Gold vanished, currencies unraveled, and trade froze. From that chaos emerged a realization. The world needed a single anchor, and Britain could no longer provide it. When the Second World War began, that realization became destiny. Have you ever wondered why delegates from 44 countries gathered in a quiet hotel in New Hampshire while bombs were still falling across Europe? They were drafting the constitution of the modern financial world. It was called the Bretton Woods Agreement, and it crowned the dollar as king. Every currency would be tied to the United States dollar. The dollar, in turn, would be convertible to gold at $35 per ounce. And because the United States controlled nearly two-thirds of the world's gold, everyone trusted it. But the real brilliance was hidden. Other nations needed dollars to trade, to settle debts, and to rebuild. That meant holding United States Treasury bonds, the promises of the American government. America could now issue debt in its own currency, while the rest of the world willingly financed it. Economists later named this the exorbitant privilege, the power to print the money everyone else must use. Empires of the past conquered with armies. The United States conquered with a printing press. When Bretton Woods ended the era of European empires, it replaced it with something quieter: financial dominance. The dollar became the blood moving through the veins of global trade. Oil, food, machinery, raw materials, all priced in dollars. If you wanted to participate in world commerce, you needed greenbacks. This gave Washington an unprecedented weapon. No empire before had the power to isolate an enemy without firing a shot. When a nation defied American policy, its banks could be cut from the dollar system, its accounts frozen, its economy choked overnight. Sanctions became modern siege warfare. In the 20th century, cannons captured cities. In the 21st century, spreadsheets do. And if you have ever noticed how nations fear being cut off from global payment systems, that fear is the shadow of this invisible war. But even empires built on credit have a breaking point. By the late 1960s, America was running massive deficits, funding the Vietnam War and expansive social programs at the same time. Foreign governments began exchanging their dollars for gold. And on one August night in 1971, President Richard Nixon appeared on television and announced something once considered impossible. The United States was closing the gold window. The dollar would no longer be backed by anything tangible. It became pure fiat money, value enforced by decree. Every previous empire that diluted its currency had eventually collapsed. Rome with its silver denarius, France with its paper assignats. But America achieved something different because the world had no replacement. Nations still needed dollars to trade oil, purchase goods, and service debt. The dollar moved beyond gold and became trust itself. That was the moment the American financial empire shifted from invisible to seemingly permanent. After breaking the gold link, Washington needed a new anchor for dollar dominance. It found one in energy. In 1974, the United States reached a quiet agreement with Saudi Arabia. Saudi oil would be sold exclusively in dollars, and in return, the United States would guarantee the kingdom's security. Soon, every major oil-exporting nation followed. From that point forward, global energy, the lifeblood of modern civilization, was priced in United States currency. If a country wanted to fuel cars, build factories, or power cities, it needed dollars. And that meant every nation had to earn, borrow, or purchase them. The dollar was no longer just money, it was oxygen. Through the late 20th century, America refined the system. The Federal Reserve influenced global liquidity. Wall Street became the center of speculation. And every crisis, from Latin America in the 1980s to Asia in the 1990s, reinforced a single truth. When panic strikes, the world runs toward the dollar, not away from it. It is a remarkable paradox. Even when American policy mistakes cause global pain, those same shocks strengthen its grip. A crisis anywhere pushes capital into United States Treasury bonds. The storms that begin in America often become the winds that keep its empire afloat. Have you ever wondered why nearly every global meltdown ends with the dollar stronger than before? That is not coincidence. That is design. Today, wars still occur, but decisive battles are fought in markets. A modern sanction can cripple a nation faster than a naval blockade. A sharp rise in United States interest rates can bankrupt dozens of countries at once. When Washington raises rates, global capital rushes back. Local currencies fall, imports become unaffordable, and governments collapse without a single missile launched. This is modern geopolitics. The world depends on the dollar, and the dollar depends on the world's dependence. China, Russia, and others now attempt to construct alternatives. New payment systems, digital currencies, trade settled in local money. But replacing a financial empire built over a century is no small task. As long as trust in the American system outweighs fear of it, the dollar remains the throne that everyone pretends not to kneel before. But every empire faces a paradox, especially one built on promises. Trust can vanish faster than gold can melt. The same privilege that allows unlimited printing also tempts collapse. Rising debt, political division, inflation, each erodes the illusion of permanence. Every empire believed its currency would last forever. Spain believed it about silver. Britain believed it about sterling. History shows no currency rules eternally. Have you ever wondered what happens when the world stops believing in the dollar? It will not collapse overnight. It will fray slowly through new alliances, new systems, and growing doubt. The fall of financial empires always begins as a whisper. So what does this conflict mean for you living under the dollar's shadow? First, understand that money is power only while it is trusted. Governments can create bills, but they cannot print faith. Second, every inflation, every crisis, every rescue follows the same pattern. Create credit, promise stability, and shift the cost into the future. It is the same tactic Rome used when it mixed tin into silver. The same tactic Britain used when it borrowed to sustain empire. The same tactic America uses today when it raises the debt ceiling. Third, real wealth does not exist in digits or decrees. It exists in what survives the loss of trust, skills, resources, production, and knowledge. When money wars end, those are the people who remain standing. Have you ever realized that the most powerful empire in history does not need colonies or crowns, only confidence? That every nation works, saves, and borrows in a language written by the United States Treasury. The secret conflict that made the dollar king was never announced, yet it was won long ago. It was a war of patience, policy, and persuasion, and it continues today. Because the dollar's true weapon is not paper. It is belief. And as long as belief holds, America reigns. But history humbles every empire that mistakes belief for truth. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. History does not hide its answers in the future. They were written in the past.